Carl Jung once said, "The most dangerous woman is not the one who deceives men, but the one who deceives herself." There's a dark psychological truth Jung discovered, one so unsettling that even he hesitated to publish it. A truth about certain women, and the unconscious shadow they carry. This isn't about hating women. It's about understanding the shadow feminine Jung warned men to never ignore. You've seen her before. The woman who seduces not with her body, but with her soul. Who mirrors a man's dreams so perfectly that he believes he's found his destiny. Until he realizes he's fallen in love with his own reflection. Jung called this illusion the Anima projection. And it's the reason why men often mistake obsession for love, chaos for depth, and emotional manipulation for destiny. But here's where it gets darker. Jung believed some women, not all, but some, become so fused with their own shadow that they feed on projection itself. They become the vessel through which a man meets the darkest parts of himself. And once he's hooked, she doesn't love him. She possesses him. Today, we'll uncover Jung's forbidden insights about this dark feminine force, what it is, how it hides, and the shocking reason why men are drawn to it again and again. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the psychological trap Jung believed could destroy a man's spirit, and how to see it before it's too late. Jung once said, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman." This image, what Jung called the Anima, is not real. It's a psychic blueprint shaped by a man's mother, his first love, his heartbreaks, and every unspoken longing he's ever buried. When a man meets a woman who unconsciously reflects this image, something strange happens. She becomes the mirror of his soul. He doesn't see her. He sees himself reflected in her eyes. The woman becomes the screen on which his unconscious projects his deepest needs. In the beginning, this feels divine, magnetic, spiritual, irresistible. But some women, often unknowingly, amplify this illusion. They become the reflection he's starving for. They intuitively mirror his desires, his wounds, his hunger for meaning. And when a man falls into that mirror, he doesn't fall in love. He falls into his own unconscious. That's the beginning of possession. He starts to feel she understands him like no one ever has. He becomes addicted to that emotional mirror, blind to her real nature, deaf to reason. Jung called this stage the enchantment, and he said, "No spell is more intoxicating than the illusion of perfect understanding." Jung observed something most men never notice. When the anima becomes corrupted by the shadow, she stops reflecting love and begins reflecting power. In Jung's psychology, the shadow is the part of the psyche that hides what we deny. Jealousy, vanity, desire for control, hunger for validation. When a woman unconsciously merges with her own shadow, her charm deepens, but it also darkens. She becomes magnetic in a way that feels almost supernatural. Jung wrote that such women feed on the man's projection. They sense what he needs to see, and they become it, for a while. But slowly, the mirror begins to crack. The very traits that once felt divine, her mystery, her passion, her emotional depth, start to feel unpredictable, even dangerous. She begins to test him, confuse him, punish him for his expectations, as if she resents the image he fell in love with. And here lies Jung's shocking truth. Some women unconsciously lure men into loving their own fantasy, only to destroy that fantasy later. Because deep down they despise being idealized. It's not always intentional. It's a dance between two unconscious forces, the man's desire to worship the feminine, the woman's instinct to test whether his love is for her or for the illusion he created. When that test begins, Jung said, love becomes initiation. The man is forced to confront his illusion, or be broken by it. This is why Jung called the Rila-E. When this wound matures unhealed, it mutates into control. The woman learns, consciously or not, that love is never safe unless she holds the emotional upper hand. So she becomes everything a man desires. She reads his needs, mirrors his soul, gives him ecstasy, validation, even purpose. But beneath that charm lies a quiet strategy. If I become everything he wants, he'll never leave me. Jung saw this as the shadow of the nurturing feminine, the corrupted mother archetype that tries to secure love through manipulation rather than trust. Over time, her love starts to suffocate. She gives endlessly, but only to receive security in return. And when the man begins to pull away, the shadow awakens. She becomes cold, punishing, unpredictable. Not because she hates him, but because she fears the loss of control means the loss of love. Jung described it as the woman who must dominate to feel safe and must destroy what she cannot control. To her, love without control feels like danger. To him, control disguised as love feels like devotion. Both are caught in the same unconscious trap, and both mistake pain for passion. Jung believed that the most seductive illusion a man can fall into is not lust, but idealization. He wrote, "Every man who cannot face his own soul will seek it in a woman and call it fate. In the Anima's light, the woman becomes divine. She's not seen as human anymore. She's the answer, the muse, the salvation. The man begins to speak of her as if she carries cosmic significance. Every text, every silence, every mood feels like a message from destiny. He no longer loves, he worships." But Jung warned, to worship the feminine is to imprison her in perfection. Once placed on a pedestal, the woman loses the freedom to be real. She must now live up to an image, flawless, mysterious, transcendent. And deep down, she feels it. At first, it feeds her ego, but soon it starts to strangle her humanity. She begins to resent the man who cannot see her flaws, her fears, Shri. Because when the goddess turns to dust, what remains is the real woman, imperfect, vulnerable, and painfully alive. And if a man can love her then, he is no longer possessed by the anima, he is liberated by it. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." After the illusion dies, silence sets in, a cold, unbearable silence. The man feels hollow, stripped of meaning. The woman who once seemed like his destiny now feels like a ghost that haunts his thoughts. He replays every word, every mistake, every emotion, trying to find where it all went wrong. But Jung would say, it didn't go wrong. It went real. The collapse of the projection is not the end of love. It's the beginning of truth. Yet this truth feels like death, because the man has lost not only her, but the idealized version of himself that existed in her eyes. Jung called this descent the nigredo, the black stage of transformation. In alchemy, nigredo is the burning away of false gold, the stage where everything you thought you were dissolves into ash. Many men don't survive this stage emotionally. Some become bitter, calling all women manipulative or soulless, not realizing they're still at war with their own unconscious. Others sink into despair, convinced love itself is an illusion. But Jung said, only what is truly ours can be destroyed. What burns away was never love. It was dependency, projection, fantasy. In the ashes, the man begins to see something new, a quiet self-awareness that feels foreign at first. He realizes the goddess was never a lie. She was a mirror. She reflected what he refused to face, his loneliness, his need to be saved, his hunger for meaning. And when the mirror breaks, the reflection returns home, to him. That's the beginning of integration. That's the rebirth Jung called the union of opposites, when the man no longer seeks the feminine outside himself, but within. Jung said, the man who looks outward dreams, the man who looks inward awakens. After the collapse, but Jung's point was this, they are mirrors for the male soul. When a man meets such a woman, it's never casual. She evokes in him what ordinary relationships cannot, obsession, spiritual longing, and the terrifying confrontation with his own depth. He feels she understands him like no one ever has, but she's not seeing him. She's reflecting his hidden self back at him. These women, Jung believed, often suffer deeply because they carry not only their own emotions, but the projections of countless men who see in them what they refuse to see in themselves. They become the stage where the masculine soul acts out its wounds. Jung described this as the curse of the symbolic feminine, being adored for what she represents, not who she truly is. And yet, he also believed these women serve a vital role in human evolution. They awaken the unconscious. They destroy illusion. They force men to grow. In Jung's words, she who carries the shadow also carries the light. But the danger is real. If a man cannot withstand the power of that mirror, he will confuse initiation with destruction. He will call awakening betrayal and flee from the very woman sent to awaken him. Jung believed that the feminine force, in all her light and darkness, exists to awaken the masculine soul. The encounter with the Anima, he said, is the most dangerous and the most essential experience in a man's life. Dangerous, because it can destroy his illusions. Essential, because it's the only thing that can free him from them. Every man who has loved deeply, loved to the point of madness, has met the awakening feminine. She tears down his false self, exposes his wounds, and demands his transformation. Jung saw her not as punishment, but as initiation, the sacred fire through which the man must pass to become whole. In myth, she appears as Eve offering the fruit, Persephone descending into the underworld, or the siren who lures sailors into the deep. To the unconscious, these stories are not warnings, they're symbi. But when they integrate, love changes form. It becomes less about need and more about recognition. Less about you complete me, and more about you reflect me. He called this the sacred tension, the eternal dance between two energies that must never fully merge, yet can never be apart. Jung warned, beware of seeking perfect harmony. It is the lifelessness of still water. Real love is the river that flows between light and shadow. Jung often said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. When you begin to see the truth about yourself, about love, about the illusions you built, something inside you dies. The man who once sought admiration must confront his emptiness. The woman who once found power in control must face her vulnerability. This is the dark night of the soul, the phase Jung called the descent into the unconscious. It feels like loss because it is loss. The death of the persona, the mask we wear to be loved. Jung believed this pain is sacred, because only through destruction can the soul rebuild itself on truth instead of fantasy. He wrote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But once you face it, once you see the shadow, the fear, the hidden longing, you become real. That is the price of awareness, loneliness, clarity, and eventually liberation. He observed that many cannot endure it. Some retreat back into comfort, relationships that numb them, distractions that keep them blind. But those who stay, those who walk through the fire instead of away from it, emerge transformed. The awakened woman learns her intuition is not a weapon, but wisdom. The awakened man learns his vulnerability is not weakness, but power. Together they no longer cling to illusion, they build from truth. Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Awareness is not given, it is earned. And every moment of honesty with yourself is the cost. Jung spent his life descending into the human psyche, studying dreams, myths, and madness, not to glorify darkness, but to find the light hidden within it. He discovered that what we call evil is often unlived potential. What we call shadow is simply light we were too afraid to own. His dark truth about some women, and truly about all people, was never condemnation. It was revelation. That the feminine holds the key to human awakening because she embodies what the world suppresses: emotion, intuition, depth, chaos, creation. Jung believed that the salvation of humanity depends on this reconciliation, on men learning to honor the inner feminine and women reclaiming the strength of their inner masculine. Only then, he said, can love become sacred, no longer a battlefield, but a mirror for evolution. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. And that journey always begins in the dark, in heartbreak, obsession, loss, confusion, until the soul is forced to turn inward and ask, what in me created this? The answer is not punishment, it's permission to live authentically, to feel fully, to integrate what you once rejected. Jung's shocking insight was that the shadow is not your enemy. It is your guide. The woman who unsettles you, the desire that frightens you, the truth that breaks you, all are gateways. For only by walking through your own darkness can you discover the luminous center of the self, the place where opposites unite, where masculine and feminine, love and loss, become one eternal pulse. And in that realization, Jung whispered to the world his final message. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Because sometimes the darkest woman in your life isn't your downfall. She's your mirror, showing you the man you were always meant to become.